So hello everyone, and welcome to the May edition of our traditional webinar, Ask Julie Anything. I am Mariana Nadai, or Mariana Nadai, as my kids told me to say my name to you guys, and I'll be your host today. Cheesy, Frito feet, gunky ears, blackened bellies, and itchy. Any idea what today's session is about? Whoever said yeast, you are correct. And we all know that when yeast settles in, it can be tough to get rid of it. So to help us understand what causes yeast, how to treat it, and much more, today we have Julianne Lee, our co-founder and formulator, covering yeast from head to toe. If you have questions about this topic, don't be shy and ask Julie anything. But before we start, I want to remind you all about some housekeeping rules. I will ask for you all to switch your chat to everyone so we can all join in the conversations. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen to ask your questions. Your questions will be answered in order, first come, first serve, and we will do our best to get through all of them tonight. So please be gentle with us. And the most important thing of all, I also want to remind you that this session provides a judgment-free space with only the health and happiness of our animals and the planet being our core goal. So without further ado, I want to call Julianne Lee.
Hi, everybody. So, this seminar is going to be interesting, or this AJA is going to be interesting because I honestly think that there's probably more discussion around yeast and less understanding about it than many things out there when it comes to our animals. It's really hardcore when they get it, and it's something that can stay very persistent, like super persistent. And the way that people are approaching it from a perspective of treating it or working with it or healing it, however you want to say it, is, I don't know, everyone's got sort of a different approach. So I'm going to just talk today about my approach. Not, anyone out there that knows me knows that I don't say mine's the best or mine's the right way or that person's the wrong way, or I don't agree with that. But this has been my approach to looking at yeast and working with animals that have yeast, dogs that have yeast predominantly, and what has been successful for me and why I do it and sort of my thought process behind it. And so I really am hoping that going through, I've got some slides. Today was a crazy day. I had a bit of an emergency with one of our old rescue donkeys. So I'm still have donkey poop under my nails, and I am a little bit frazzled, and I wanted to have a couple more slides, but I didn't. So I'm going to go old school and do this sort of stuff. So for those of you that aren't used to me doing that, I'm going to be doing that today because I really want to get at the end of the day, or at the end of the seminar, I really want people to understand how I look at it. Whether you want to look at it that way, it doesn't matter, but just my understanding of it and how the way I approach it has seemed to be super successful so far for me. So here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and then I actually have a slide presentation, but I'm probably going to be all over the map like I normally am, but I might even be more over the map. And that's because there were some things that I really did want to talk to you that I didn't have time to really put on the slides, or I kind of maybe didn't think I wanted to go down that rabbit hole, because it can be quite confusing, but I think I have to go down the rabbit hole. So I'm going to go down the rabbit hole and with pieces of paper instead of the slides. All right. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to put on my, okay, and then we're going to go into this. All right. So thanks everybody for coming tonight, and we're gonna hopefully have lots of time for some questions after. It's not gonna be a really long seminar or webinar, but we are definitely going to hit on a few things. So what is yeast and what causes it? Even that in itself, nobody can actually land on, yes, 1,000,000% it's this or 1,000,000% that. But in general, it's a dysbiosis or an unbalanced microbiome, but of the body, right? So not just the microbiome of the gut, but of the actual body, which includes skin. So it lives and predominantly affects the skin, which is the body's largest organ. When we think of, everyone knows that I'm really, really into gut health. So when we're looking at yeast, I can remember the first time I said, when you want to work with yeast, you don't want to use a bunch of probiotics. And it was kind of like everybody sort of screeched their brakes on. And I remember writing an article called The Overcultured Canine and talking about how certain certain pathology or certain issues, we don't want to just overpopulate or overculture the gut. But with yeast, it's a little different than candida. It's very similar, but it's different. And it lives on the skin. So the microbiome of the skin has to be equally looked at and supported as in the gut. So full eradication, I hear that a lot. So we know that for me, what's really important for the skin, for the gut, predominantly anything, is that any kind of microbiome, any kind of bacteria needs to stay educated. And the way friendly bacteria works in the gut and on the skin is by having to stay alert, right? So if we take ketoconazole or we take a yeast medication or a topical yeast shampoo, and we try to eradicate, which is the focus and the goal of conventional drugs when it comes to things like this, when we try to eradicate it, then what winds up happening is that we reduce the soldiers or the educated bacterias, we reduce their ability to stay alert. So we don't want to get rid of yeast. We don't want to get rid of, yeast is just one thing. We don't want to get rid of yeast. We don't want to get rid of Clostridium. We don't want to get rid of E. coli. We don't want to get rid of completely any of those bacterias, even if they're pathogenic, because keeping the positive bacteria on its toes by it going, okay, I see there's this much colony of yeast or this much colony of E. coli. It keeps them sharp, and it's almost like a border collie, right? So if you think of a border collie and the border collie's keeping all the sheep in one space, and then the border collie leaves, what happens, right? The sheep run everywhere. So what the friendly bacteria does is it kind of keeps the sheep, like a border collie, in the spaces that it needs to do. So it needs to be sharp. It's always looking. If we get rid of that sheep, all of that pathogenic bacteria or yeast, then what happens is the border collie becomes lazy. It becomes, it starts to do things that it doesn't need to do. It doesn't keep it on its toes. So balancing the immune system is key. You want to keep some hooligans, bacteria around to keep the immune system on its toes. So that's a really, really important part. It keeps them fit, it keeps them active, it keeps them educated. So full eradication, or getting rid of anything that we consider shouldn't be there, like yeast or E. coli or whatever pathogens, we aren't doing our bodies or our animals' bodies any favor. So that's one thing that I want everyone to try to remember, just even in this short period of time, is that full eradication of even things that we deem as enemies is not what the body naturally does, and is not how the body stays educated and strong. So what you want to do is when we're looking at do's and don'ts when it comes to yeast, we want to support the immune system to fight secondary bacteria caused by yeast. So this is a big one. And this is where we can really go on this circle, right? So oftentimes we see allergies, leaky gut, and yeast. We see all of them together. So we want to ramp up the immune system. People are trying to ramp up the immune system, and we're going to get into why that's not good. But when the yeast is affecting the body, it often, more times than not, gets a secondary bacterial infection. So it has the yeast, then they scratch and itch, and the toxins in the yeast cause the skin to be really raw and vulnerable. And then they get secondary bacteria like Staphylococcus. So we need to support the immune system, but we don't want to ramp the immune system up too high. And I'm going to tell you why. So ramping it up too high or too fast by using too many pre and probiotics, we don't want to do that. Because what will happen, and we're going to get into this in a minute, is something called a Herx reaction. So if we go in and we are like, okay, we got to kill this yeast, we got to ramp up this immune system, we got to feed all these probiotics, it's not bad and it's not wrong. And when people say, give, kefir, give this, give that, when it comes to yeast, they're not incorrect. But what happens is when you ramp the immune system up too high and the body starts to destroy the yeast, you can get something called a Herx reaction. So we're going to go into that. So what we don't want to do is ramp them up with too many pre and probiotics. We want to use topical herbal support that doesn't destroy the natural bacteria defense system. The way to remember that is that if you're going to use an antibiotic, and I bet you every single person out here that's listening to this, if we use an antibiotic, what happens? We give our animals or ourselves antibiotics. It goes in, it doesn't differentiate between good bacteria and bad bacteria, and it just kills everything, right? And then you get secondary yeast infections, you get a dysbiosis, you get overgrowth of pathogenic bacteria. You get leaky gut syndrome. It's a nightmare. Well, the same holds true for the skin. So when we're using things like ketoconazole and big guns, medicated shampoos, we're destroying the microbiome of the skin exactly like we destroy the microbiome of the gut, only we're doing it on the skin. And then what actually is happening is, yes, it might be destroying some of the yeast, but why your dog is actually feeling better is because more times than not, you're helping the reduction of the secondary bacteria that's on the skin that's also causing the itching and distress. So if there's Staphylococcus, if there's other bacteria, that's the secondary problem from yeast, then your dog, you look like, oh yeah, I give my dog a bath, and then it gets a reprieve. But you can do that. You can still give them a reprieve, but don't be giving them reprieves with things that are then going to rebound on the skin and create more pathogenic bacteria on the skin and a way more overgrowth of yeast again, because there's not going to be any friendly bacteria on the skin. There's no more border collies on the skin to keep the yeast at bay, right? So the yeast is just going to come back with a vengeance. So, but what we can do, so you don't want to overbathe them. You don't want to be using a bunch of medicated shampoos and things like that. But what we can do is we can use topical support. And I have some stuff in these next slides of what we can actually put on that is sort of like a functional topical antibacterial that are herbals that support the natural defense system on the body and without causing that rebound effect or destroying all the good bacteria that's on the skin. And a huge one, an absolute huge one, is using 100% cotton sheets. So they've done lots of studies and they've proven. So think of yeast and think of if anyone's out there and they've seen yeast in between toes and they've smelt that stinky sort of nacho-y taco smelling toes or stinky socks feet. The same with ears. Yeast grows where there's not a lot of air. So it thrives in that sort of dark, dank, not so much oxygen space. When you use synthetic fibers, the yeast actually grows on the sheets. It can proliferate on the sheets with synthetic fibers, whereas cotton sheets breathe. And I think people have heard that before, where, if you're wearing cotton pants or a cotton shirt, it actually allows your body to breathe. So when your animal is on breathable sheets, the friendly bacteria will overgrow and the oxygen will help to destroy the pathogenic bacteria and also the yeast. So I think what I might do, let me look at something. Okay, so what we can do, we're going to really get into what yeast is and how do we actually combat yeast in a few slides. But this is something that I want everyone to be sure that they walk away with from a perspective of, okay, if I can't use ketoconazole and I can't use medicated shampoos, what can I do to give my dog some relief? And what can I do to help to decrease the secondary bacteria? So we have a love bugs mask, and it's on all of the it's on our website, but it's here right now if you guys want to take some screenshots. And these slides are going to be available to you guys anyways. And what this does is it helps to not particularly increase the immunity. So we're not giving this internally, right? We're not ramping up the immune system with probiotics internally at all when we're dealing with yeast, but externally we can because it reacts on the skin a bit differently than it does in the gut. So using something like a love bugs mask and leaving it on, and then after, I find this to be really, really helpful, is an after bath rinse. So you rinse the love bugs mask off, and then you take a liter of chamomile and green tea. So you steep chamomile and green tea together. You add a dropper full of colloidal silver. You add 4 sprays of owies and oopsies, because it's got things like golden seal and all these natural antibacterials. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. And then you pour it on them, just like you're rinsing your hair and leaving on a leave-in conditioner. It's exactly the same, but you wind up, this helps to protect them and give them some ease from the itching, but it also really does, it allows the friendly bacteria and creates kind of like a barrier that yeast doesn't like at all. So pre and probiotics for yeast. So you guys know that I am a gut and prebiotic a bit of a nerd. But when I started developing a product in my vet hospital for yeast, I dug into something really, really different. And I'm going to go back to this because when I show this to you, and Mariana, you're going to have to tell me if you can see this.
Okay.
So I'm just going to lift up these pieces of paper and maybe someone can type, if I don't know whether Emily, she's a fast typer, maybe she can type this into the chat, or people can take pictures of it. But it's called Malassezia. So people have something called Candida, which is yeast, but this is the kind of yeast predominantly that dogs get. And one thing that's very different with yeast that everybody has to try also to remember, because if you can get your head around this, it's really gonna help you understand how to combat yeast. So what you want to think about is something called extracellular polymeric substances. If everyone wants to take a picture of that. And what that is that it is actually a protective coating that harmful bacterias and things like yeast protect themselves against antibiotics and your immune system. Other people here, that's what they are, but they're called biofilm. So when you think of a biofilm is literally a film that goes around the cell that protects the cells, the yeast cells or bad bacteria, things like that. Biofilms prevent antibiotics, prevent medications, and prevent your immune system from actually destroying. It's the yeast and the pathogenic bacteria's natural defense mechanism. So what you want to do with yeast that is so phenomenally important is you want to go slow and steady. And the reason that you want to do this is to avoid a Herx reaction. So what a Herx reaction is when the yeast die-off happens too quickly, the symptomatology, or what your dog or you, if you're dealing with Candida or you're dealing with some other kind of biofilm, what happens is that when they're alive, they produce lots of toxins. And one of them being acetone. So if for anyone that knows what acetone is, like the stuff that you take nail polish off with, imagine having acetone on your skin. So that's just one chemical out of the many toxins that yeast produce. But when you kill them, when they die, the cells die, and I always call it, it's almost like a little graveyard of yeast cells. Then they actually wind up producing more toxins. The toxins are released when the cells die, and they look exactly like the symptomatology of yeast. So here you go in and you're feeding your dog really well, and you're giving them all these probiotics, and you're doing apple cider vinegar, and you're giving them the leaky gut protocol, and you're doing everything that you're supposed to do. And the body reacts by going, woohoo, my immune system is mega strong, which is what it needs to do in order to prevent yeast and pathogenic bacteria. But when it ramps up too quick, when it has those bacteria in that yeast or that pathogenic process, it kills them too quickly, and then the body detoxes so severely, you wind up going back to the doctors if you're a person and you're covered with, like, rashes and different things like that from Candida, or your dog goes back and it looks like the yeast is 10 times worse. And then they go right back on to that, ketoconazole, they go right back on to antibiotics, they go right back on to, and they're back on that, that carousel of not being, of drugs getting worse, then getting better, then getting worse, then getting better. they just go back on that. And that's and the only thing that's happening there is that you're actually increasing, you're ramping the immune system up too quickly. So when you're going to battle with yeast, my approach to this is we have to weaken the enemy, okay? And we weaken the enemy at the very beginning by starving it. And yeast grows on sugar. Like it thrives on sugar. So we want to reduce, before you even start to go to battle with these guys, you want to make them weaker. So again, the battle isn't like, immune system against the yeast, and then it's like this big, huge, chaotic mess, and your dog, it looks like it's getting sicker. So you want to starve the yeast, you want to weaken the yeast. Then you come in with things like Podarco, really specific enzymes, which we're going to talk about, caprylic acid. Now, what are those things? I'm going to tell you why we're using those in a minute, because that's really important as well. Then you need to detoxify. So you're going in, you're weakening them, you're going in and you're combating them. And then once they're weak and they can't fight as hard, then you're going to detoxify the body with liver tonic, clearly, because whether it directly affects the liver, anything that's toxic in the body, the liver has to work overtime. So you're going to detoxify the body. You're going to use homeopathic remedies like Nux vomica, which is also a detox. Sulfur is for the itch. Berberis is to support specific organ things that are toxic to the organs that show itself on the skin, that manifests on the skin rather than diarrhea. Berberis, berberis is for the skin, the toxins for the skin. Graphites, echinacea. You want to support the organs which the physiology affects. So when you're looking at yeast, you're going to use remedies to help detoxify, remedies that focus on the integrity of the skin and itching. And echinacea helps with the immune system, but in a very different way than probiotics do. So I'm going through this a little bit. And the reason that I'm going through this a little bit is because just to understand it a little more. I'm not saying, go out and get this, but for people that want to understand about the Yeasty Beast protocol and why we're using the things that we're using, these are the reasons why. But once we get to the Yeasty Beast 3, I want everybody, this is when it's going to get a little bit more specific about yeast cells, and I'm going to go actually back to the next slide about targeting them. So things like dandelion root, everyone knows these herbs. But what that does again is it aids in the detoxification, and it also helps to support the function of histamine, which is really important because often yeast and allergies go hand in hand. It's really common. The Yeasty Beast 1 is the homeopathic remedy, and the Yeasty Beast 2. Okay, so when we go into what we're actually going to do to destroy these yeast is we are going to try to break into the biofilm. That to me is the key. It's the absolute key. So when you look at these biofilms and you think of them, it's like, think of them almost like a polysaccharide that is like a cell wall. You want to be able, you want to use products, and you want to use things like enzymes. I'm going to go back here. Hang on a second. You want to use things if you look in the back and you see that big ugly thing, if you think of that encapsulated in a cell, you want almost like Pac-Man coming in And when they're weakening, you want to be giving ingredients that ingest, for lack of better words, break down, solidify that cell wall. And things that do that are specific enzymes. So the enzymes that I'm just going to tell you the enzymes. I'm just going to bring this up for you and tell you specifically. Where are you, Mariana? Because I had it on here. Here we go. So when we're looking at that, we're looking at hemicellulose. So that is a particular enzyme that goes in and which is in the powder formula. It goes in and it actually ingests the cellulose, the actual wall of it breaks that wall down. And if you think of them like little Pac-Man, you need to destroy that biofilm in order to get into the cell wall, in order to destroy the yeast, in order to break that yeast down. Then we use protease and protease 1 and protease 3. And what they are, they're also an enzyme. So when you think of that's why there's like a types of digestive enzymes in this, because we're looking at actually trying to digest the cell wall. We're trying to get the body to digest the actual yeast. So it's not like we're going in and we're giving it all these toxins. We're actually trying to get it to break it down and digest it. Why? Because if we don't get it to digest it at the same time as it's dying, it's all going to fall down into this like graveyard. And then it's going to produce more toxins, and the dog is going to have a Herx reaction. And that's what we want to avoid at all costs. The other thing that we use is when you're looking at this product, we use a type of, it's called S. boulardii, which is yeast. So some people call it a probiotic and some people actually call it a yeast, but it's a bacteria, it's a yeast bacteria. So it's almost like if you think about likes cures likes. So it's a specific species of yeast bacteria that attack and act like the border collie, specific border collie for yeast. So when we're looking at all of these different things, we have a plan, right? So when we're trying to work with yeast, we actually have a really, really big plan. And I think that's where we kind of fall short when we're grabbing things all over the place in holistic medicine, right? Where we're taking things and we're dumping all of this stuff in, and we're dumping all of that stuff in, and we're kind of grasping for straws. Because anyone out there that's had a dog with yeast, it's ugly. It's ugly. You feel your heart breaks for them. They get so stinky. Nobody wants to hug them. It's psychologically really draining on them and super duper hard on them. So yeast is a really crappy thing to work with. But when you have a plan of attack or going to battle, that's literally what we have to think about. We're going to weaken them. We're going to use herbs and specific enzymes and nutraceuticals that go in and break down biofilm. And probiotics do not break down biofilm. So gut bacteria does not particularly break down biofilm. It does other stuff that the postbiotic effects is really important, but it's not the go-to to start off with when we're dealing with yeast. We want it. What you can do though is that when you're dealing with yeast, like look what this thing looks like, because that is almost what a yeast cell does look like. And it does such damage on the mucosal lining of the gut when it's in the gut, and it does a lot of damage to the skin. So we want to replenish that, because if we don't, we're left with a very vulnerable gut or a very vulnerable skin. So pre and probiotics are really important to try to bring back the integrity of the mucosal lining of the gut wall, so that we're not winding up with leaky gut from these guys. And the same holds true for the skin integrity, right? The actual skin integrity needs to be able to be rebalanced and brought back to its healthy state, just like the mucosal lining of the gut. So I just want to see if there was one other thing. I wanted to talk about the sacroilius. All right, so if we go back a couple of steps to, whoops, sorry guys, hold on. I'm going to go back to this one. We have this as a tool, right? This is a tool to give some reprieve, because that's why everyone usually starts using medicated shampoos, is we need to give them a reprieve. So when we look at this list, this is kind of like your immediate reprieve toolbox that you can use to try and bathe them so they don't smell, they're not so stinky, give them a reprieve from itchy without reducing the friendly bacteria on their skin. We have to be really careful not to be using a bunch of pre and probiotics in this place. We don't want to overbathe them, which we just talked about, and we want to definitely use cotton sheets. I remember I did some rescue work in BC, and I fostered a lot of dogs, and I got a lot of dogs with yeast. My entire house was cotton sheets. I'm not joking. Like on my rugs, on the floor, on the couches, on the beds. They're super easy to wash, and I just had them down, and it really, really, it doesn't sound like much, but it really makes a massive difference. So, and then we want to remember, oh my goodness, I'm going the wrong way, guys, sorry. We want to remember that we don't want to eradicate. We want to leave some yeast. We want to leave some of the little hooligans kicking around so that our border collies stay strong and fit. Oh, am I going backwards now? I'm going the wrong way still. Why am I doing that? My goodness. And then slow and steady. That's another really huge one. You want to go slow and steady. I know everybody wants to just go in with the big guns and kill these things and get rid of them and help their animals, but that's not the way to deal with yeast at all. And then have a plan, going to battle, be very strategic in what you want to do, and nothing is stopping you for coming in with some probiotics. So you can do 2 or 3 weeks of this plan, then you can come in and sort of refurbish and re-inoculate the gut for even just a week, and then go back to this. So you can move back and forth, but you want to start with this, definitely, and you want to pay close attention. If everything's going great, stay the course with this. Don't even start to re-inoculate. Just stay the course with this for a while. And then if you see if you actually see it maybe slowing down a little bit, then you can come in with some probiotics and maybe do that for a week and go back. So you can give the body a little bit of a rest from this, go into the probiotics, and then come back into the battle again. All right. Well, that was I know I talked really fast because I want to make sure that I have some time for some questions. So I'm going to stop sharing I'm going to exit and stop sharing my screen.
I don't want to cut any lines here, but I have a question. So
Yeah.
since I am the host, I'm gonna say my question first. if you guys don't mind, but I think it will be very helpful. I don't know, Julie, if you can say more about the differences of treating yeast in dogs and cats, because like our yeast protocol, as you can see, like everyone could see in that image that you showed to us during the presentation, that there's only a dog over there, right? So when our products have this images, just because it's not good to be used on cats. It's better to be used on dogs, right? So can you?
That's because it's the Darko.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just like going to circle back to my question that if you could explore a little bit the differences on treating yeast in cats and dogs.
Literally, the only difference you just wouldn't use Podarco. Everything else is fine with cats. All the digestive enzymes are fine with cats. All of the Espellardi is fine. Everything's fine with cats. We just don't can't use Podarco with them. So that's why we tell people just to use that protocol on dogs. But you can use the liver tonic, you can use the Yeasty Beast homeopathic remedy. And you know, we don't see as much yeast in cats, but we're starting to. And I think the reason that we're starting to is because we're using a lot more drugs on cats than we used to. We're seeing a lot more allergies with cats, right? Like we used to see allergies with dogs all the time. Now we're seeing allergies with cats. And often yeast will follow allergies, right? Because the overuse of antibiotics, because a lot of allergies create secondary staphylococcus, right? The minute something itches and there's something open on the skin, if the immune system already isn't functioning correctly, whether it's high or low, it doesn't really matter. They're put on immune suppressive drugs, and then they get secondary staphylococcus. So cat, dog, doesn't matter. If they've got allergies, they'll either, more than often than not, they're going to go on Atopica, they're going to go on Venectyl P, they're going to go on different kinds of immune suppressive drugs. When you suppress the immune system and then the body the animal scratches itself and creates a rawness or a sore spot, their bodies are suppressed. They're on immune suppressive drugs. So then they get secondary infections just like that, really, really fast. So then they go on antibiotics. The second they go on antibiotics, you're setting them up for getting an overgrowth of yeast, right? Or where they're putting topical corticosteroids on the skin, or they're doing all of these, things that are destroying the skin microbiome and the gut microbiome. So more allergies we're seeing in cats, more yeast that we're seeing in cats than we didn't used to. So, for people that are out there that have cats with yeast, they should probably just reach out to us, and I'd be happy to tell them what kind of enzymes to try go and find.
Great. Okay, thank you. So now I will start here with the Q&A, and the first question is from Christina Hicks. Hi, Julie. I would love to get your advice on anything else I can do to support my girls' fight with yeast. She is a 10-year-old intact JRT, fed quality freeze diet raw. We recently switched to pork from chicken. No vaccines or flea tick treatments in years, and she's rarely bathed with soap. I use an air purifier and keep a very low toxic chemical home environment. I've been cycling her through the Yeast Beast and leaky gut protocols for about 2 years now, Phytophthora 2, just trying to put out the fires and juggle between her chronic yeast and gut issues. The last time I put her on the Yeast Beast protocol, she had a massive GI flare and wouldn't eat. Now she's eating great on the leaky gut protocol again, but it's so itchy, she's creating bleeding wounds, plus yeast ears, and I'm noticing more dark yeast spots all over. Besides not giving up, being patient, keeping the relief protocol, using CBD and chamomile tea, is there anything else I can do?
I think my first question would be how long, she's 10.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way that she can type in the answer lives, how long she's been struggling with yeast and how I'm looking for about 2 years she's been doing the Yeasty Beast in the leaky gut protocol. How long before that did she have it?
Okay, let's see. At least 5 years. I'm wondering if her whole life.
Yeah, so she's had it a really long time. I would say, spray doesn't, I would say to, and when she goes on, she's on the leaky gut protocol now. I would say to try to switch that up with a species specific. So when I look at this, if she's had it for that length of time, chances are, even if it's her whole life, chances are she was born with a really, really compromised gut microbiome, right? So she may have been born with a very non-diverse microbiome in her gut. I would probably take her, switch her to pork from chicken. Okay, yeah, well, I definitely wouldn't have her on chicken, that's for sure. But I think that I do have the wolf. Hold on a second. She just wrote something down here. I'm all over the map. Where did she
I
just
do
do
have the wolf and Fido. She's a puppy meal
mill
rescue.
rescue? Have you given the wolf or Fido? And if you have, how often? Is she writing? Do you know if she's
No, yes, Fido for a few months, wolf not yet.
not yet? Okay. So I think if she had a GI sort of, a GI issue with that, the flare happened right before I was going to give her the wolf. Okay. Phytophthora made my dog's ear get inflamed. Okay, well, that's interesting. And the reason anyways, we'll get into that. Oh my God, there's so many things popping up. I'm like,
Don't go to the comments. So if you
I
can
know.
ask them to give you some extra details and then I can read it for you. So just stay focused
Okay.
on answering the
Okay.
question.
Awesome. Let me get out of that then. So I think that what I would do in that case is I would actually give her the wolf and nothing else. Just do the wolf for like 3 weeks. Don't give her the Yeasty Beast protocol. Don't give her the leaky gut protocol. I have honestly seen dogs that have been this bad only be able to go on the protocol to literally one day of the protocol, one day either Phytophthora or the wolf, like literally every other day to kind of, I don't want to say trick it, but almost like trick it. So you're going in, you have this plan of attack, you're doing it that way. Then you go on to something else that gives a completely different, almost like genetic DNA to the gut. So when we're dealing with, especially the wolf one, we're re-inoculating the dog's gut with a virgin bacteria that they would never have. They would never have it as a dog, like a puppy, even if they had good gut flora when they were born. They won't be getting it from any other probiotics. They won't be getting it from food. It's a really, really, really specific genetic re-inoculation of a bacteria that they could have had a long time ago. And it's coming from a virgin gut, a gut that hasn't been vaccinated, a gut that hasn't had commercialized food, a gut that hasn't had flea and tick medication, a gut that, you know, has been on only raw food in real raw food, like whole prey for generations. So the real sticking point ones, I would say to try to go into the wolf and just keep them on the wolf for a little bit and do the topical sort of reprieve things that we put out there with the with the masks and doing the rinse so that we can try and give them some immediate relief and reprieve.
Great, thanks, Julie. Therese is asking, what's your recommended treatment for recurring malassezia? Dog has been on leaky gut protocol for 15 months. Zymox spray doesn't clear it up.
Zymox spray. So I only recommend Zymox for ears, and the one that I use is the enzyme Zymox enzyme. But if you've only been on leaky gut, then definitely I would recommend the Yeasty Beast protocol. Stop the leaky gut protocol. Go on to the Yeasty Beast protocol, and once you're finished the Yeasty Beast protocol, you can go back on leaky gut, or you can do the relief one that people are talking about, which is that you're alternating like 3 or 4 of them so that the body doesn't become over ramped up. You're not going to go into a Herx reaction and you're re-inoculating with species specific probiotics.
Great. And some other Christine, is not the same one from the same question, from the first question, is asking, my 7-month-old Yorkie gets recurring yeast infections in his ears. He's fed farmer's dog pork and turkey formula, and I also give him Adored Beast, I guess, probiotic each day. Just started doing that a week ago. What should I incorporate to prevent the infection from recurring without having to constantly give him eardrop antibiotics?
Well, you're on the right path. That's for sure. You know, sometimes I do see farmer's dog. I don't know what that is, if that's a raw formula or not. Sometimes I do see animals really react negatively to any kind of poultry, chicken, turkey, even pheasant, even duck. They can have sensitivities to that. If he's like that, I would just keep him on one protein for at least 3 months. Definitely the probiotics, and you could definitely do the Yeasty Beast protocol. 100% you could do it. As far as internal eardrops, I really, really like something called Zymox, and it's the Zymox enzyme, not the Zymox ear cleaner. It's an actual Zymox enzyme, and they have some with steroids in it and some without steroids in it. Get the one without steroids.
Great,
you can get it on Amazon.
Great, thanks, Julie. Helen is asking here, hi, Julie, thank you for you. Can dogs recover from yeast on a vegetarian diet or only raw? Does it take a month for every year of age to turn around? And why do vets only say the dogs have an allergy? Are soy sprouts good for dogs?
So, that's a tough question. If it was I would say if you're doing a vegetarian diet that is, I mean, dogs aren't vegetarian, right? I mean, I've been vegetarian for, I don't know, 30 years. So I feel like, but I also do feel like I know that Richard Pitcairn has a really good vegetarian diet. If you wanted to get his book, if you're really wanting to have your dog on a vegetarian food, he's got a really good recipe, Dr. Richard Pitcairn, a really good vegetarian recipe. But I would say no if it's dry food, because it's the whole concept of vegetarian is the fiber and the antioxidants and the incredible bioflavonoids and all of that. But that gets a lot of the majority of that gets destroyed when it gets heat processed. So I'm not sure if your vegetarian diet is real food, or like a commercially based food. And if it's commercially based, I would say no. I feel like sometimes really, really, really horribly sick dogs that have extremely bad leaky gut can benefit from more vegetables, for sure. I have seen that and witnessed that many, many, many times. But to answer your question, can they recover from yeast on a vegetarian diet? They could, if it's a real vegetarian diet and it's live food and you're following like Richard Pitcairn's recipe. I think yes, I would say yes. And our soy sprouts, good. I think sprouts are really good for dogs, but I wouldn't use soy because soy is not something that to me would be genetically in their makeup, right? Even when you look at if they're eating a deer, if the deer is eating some kind of sprouts, it probably wouldn't be soy sprouts. It would probably be, different sprouts from, ferns and sprouts from different kinds of, even beans and things like that. I know that, Jean Dodds doesn't like the legume family. We have to be careful with the legume family, but that's once they're in legumes, and that's because of the chitins. So they're particularly hard to break down and digest, and they can do a lot of damage on the gut. But when they're in the sprout stage, they don't have it. So we don't have to worry about that so much. So I would say sprouts, yes, like broccoli sprouts and things like that would be great for dogs, or are great for dogs, but I wouldn't use soy sprouts.
Great, thanks. Kathy is asking, is it possible to have a yeast infection in my dog's ears without any yeast smell, or is it more likely a bacterial infection?
Well, I would also say, what color is it? If it's a thick, dark discharge and the ear is really red, it's often yeast, but sometimes it can be bacteria. It's pretty easy. All your vet has to do is take a swab and put it under a microscope and look, and he'll know in 5 seconds flat if it's bacteria or yeast. And yeah, you can definitely have yeast without that really, really horrific smell. It usually does have it, but you can have it, yes.
It's an anonymous question. Does gentian help with yeast ears with healed over hematomas? Thank you for this.
Well, a healed over hematoma and gentian. I get really nervous of gentian because I've seen animals react negatively to it. So I'd be very, very, very careful with it. Just because I'm such a wuss and I don't like my animals to ever suffer. And at my clinic, I was very really super anal about that too, because I wanted animals to come in and not be scared to come in again. So I was very careful to make it always a great experience and not cause pain. And I have seen gentian have some pretty severe reactions. So it's really not my go-to. But I think, I'm not sure if you're asking if it can go on the bottom part of it where the hematoma is healed, or to go in its ear so that they don't get a hematoma again by shaking their heads or scratching their ears. I'm not sure what you're asking, but gentian's not my favorite go-to.
Okay, thanks. Lisa is interested in a suggestion, a yellow lab, 6.5 years old, ongoing ear issue with only one ear. Currently working with a homeopath, but not seeing much progress. Brown yeast with swelling and redness and sometimes weepy.
Yeah. Well, there are lots of homeopathic remedies for, especially for yeast infections in the ear, but I don't know if you're, what else you're doing, right? So homeopathy is an amazing, like amazing, amazing, amazing. I didn't ever not use homeopathy with yeast infections of any kind that I saw, or yeast issues of any kind that I saw in my practice. But you know, are they on something like you know, some kind of a yeast protocol like we just talked about, like an enzyme or a specific yeast probiotic or Podarco, or are they on anything like that? Because that's really incredibly helpful. And again, Zymox, like it's like a little miracle. But I don't ever do just one thing, right? I always like, it's addressing the yeast, making sure that the diet, I don't know what this dog's on as far as a diet goes, you know, like, oops, are they on like a really good raw diet, species specific diet? All of that stuff has to come into place, because the yeast didn't get there for no reason, and you can't just address it as yeast. You have to address it differently as with different things, but you have to also look at the high level everything. Its stress levels, it's what is it eating? What other supplements is it on? Is it getting enough exercise? You know, is it lying on, you know, rugs and furniture that is all sort of nylon and synthetic? Does it have a lot of, you know, is there a lot of perfumes or hormone disruptors in your house? So, you know, I always feel like our dogs, whether they have yeast or leaky gut or hypothyroidism, whatever we're dealing with, they're a tool for us to look around our house and get our houses healthier for ourselves too, as well as our animals, because everything affects it. Like when the immune system becomes off, if hormone disruptors happen, you know, through inhalation of Febreze and, you know, plug-in perfume things and scented candles and fabric softeners and things like that, those hormone disruptors can play havoc on us, our children, and really our animals big time, because they're on them. They're lying on them more, right? They're not, they're licking they're lying on them and licking their feet. It's like taking your sheet and licking your sheet, right? So they're actually ingesting them more than we are. So I would try Zymox, make sure they're on really good species specific food, and then use a protocol for something that's specifically for yeast.
Thanks, Julie. Heather is asking here, she started like this, changed his diet again, like the protocol recommends, since the food I was feeding seemed to be high in starch. Started the liver tonic 2 weeks later and have been following the protocol. Just started Yeasty Beast 2 today. He has not had a solid poop since the day after starting the liver tonic. He has mucousy diarrhea about twice a day, sometimes urgently in the middle of the night. Should I make any changes to the protocol? Should I stop using it? Should we power through it, since mucousy diarrhea is fairly normal for him, just not this frequent, often urgent? Are yeast-related issues always related to diet, or could it be caused by something else?
Okay, so at first I was like, ooh, that doesn't sound good. But then when you said that he does get it normally, but now he's getting it urgency. So you don't want that, right? You don't want that. But what is it right after? I wanted to, he's on Yeasty Beast 2 today. He's just started Yeasty Beast 2 today. When did he get the mucus diarrhea? Right after liver tonic?
Yeah.
Just started Yeasty Beast 2 today. He has not had a solid poop since the day after starting the liver tonic. So my first question would be, what happened with the diet? Right? Because I've been using liver tonic for 25 years and I can't even imagine it causing mucousy poop. So what I'm wondering is your diet change, which is really, really good. And thank you for doing that, because a lot of people don't. They'll go straight to the protocol and they don't change the diet. So kudos on you for trying to decrease the starch. But I'm wondering, if you decrease the starch, did you increase protein and fat? I'm wondering if this is more diet related than what we're giving him from the protocol. Is there a way you can ask her that, Mariana?
You can ask, and then I'll keep my eye on the answers here.
Okay.
Let's see what she says.
So I think I'm gonna answer Suzanne's Sherman's question.
Okay.
So Suzanne,
Oh.
this might go,
No. Go ahead. Sorry.
So Suzanne, this might be relevant of what I asked before, which is going when we see things that are really persistent like this, like we're not seeing results fast. Two things that I think about always is that the dog is lacking a species specific bacteria. So in this, I would probably do like the relief one. So if her yeasty ears and itching, yeah, I would say I would definitely look at intermittent with this, either the wolf one or the phytospora, or both. You could be doing the intermittent phytospora, and then once you're finished phytospora, you could do intermittent wolf and try to inoculate the species specific, like, bacteria from a dog's gut and bacteria from the wolf's gut. I think that's why I came out with those species specific bacterias, is for the really difficult cases that I'm almost positive that the animals were born without a diverse bacteria in their gut. They were probably born with it. And those animals will have a much harder time moving through diseases like allergies or leaky gut or yeast and things like that. So I would try to inoculate this dog with a species specific probiotic.
Thanks, Julie. So Heather said here, increase protein in organ meat and raw bone, and change the diet to frozen raw by small batch and freeze dried raw by Northwest Naturals.
Okay, so she increased the protein and fat. And that's probably
Increase protein in organ meat and raw bone.
Yeah. I would say that's probably the culprit. So I would go back to giving lots of fiber again, but just choosing less starchy things, like more green leafy vegetables. I would probably go back to where you were when it comes to fat and protein and bone, and add more like green leafy vegetables to it, which are not starchy at all. And then
Okay.
and continue with it. If you keep getting this issue, right? I mean, it's really hard. I'm looking and hearing two different things with this, Heather, with your dog. The fact that this dog had soft kind of mucousy poops right from the beginning. I'm tempted to tell you to put him on the leaky gut protocol and have them on the leaky gut protocol for a little bit, and then start the Yeasty Beast for 2 weeks, then go back on leaky gut for 2 weeks, and then do Yeasty Beast for 2 weeks, and go back and forth, because it really, to me, it sounds like he's got an inflamed mucosal lining, and it won't matter what you're giving, food or otherwise, until you give relief and calm down the inflammatory response in the mucosal lining. I don't think he's going to recover from anything how he should.
Thanks, Julie. Emily just said here that Heather had um, um, to take her pup out, so probably she didn't hear you, but
Hear that? Okay.
yeah.
Is she,
But
well,
we
if
can
she,
go ahead.
yeah, or she texts or chats when she comes back in.
Yeah.
Like if she comes back in and joins, or maybe I told her to send us an email. Yeah, definitely we need to tell her that, because I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it's her dog has an inflamed mucosal lining, right?
Thanks,
Uh,
Julie. Thanks, Emily.
I
Go
also
ahead.
saw, just really quickly, what Zymox do we recommend? We recommend Zymox enzyme, but without cortisone.
Okay. Lori is asking here, have you had success treating persistent lip fold dermatitis? Yeast.
Yeah, 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 I have. There's a few things that are really, really good with that. Definitely putting them on the Yeast TV's protocol helps. That lip, the rinse that I was mentioning, taking that rinse, putting it in a little, like doing a little one, right? So breaking it down into a much smaller amount. And then when they eat, rinsing, wiping their lips with that mixture really helps. Putting it on before they go to sleep, when they're actually sleeping, and it can sit in there, it really helps. And also, different homeopathic remedies really help for lip fold dermatitis, like pepper sulf and silica, and there are quite a few nitric acid. There's different homeopathic remedies that can help. What you could try is, if you're going to use the protocol, then the homeopathic remedies in there already. But if you aren't going to try the protocol, then and you're just going to use the topicals, then I would definitely be giving probably the wolf strain and the wolf probiotic, and I would be giving our rebalancer, because our rebalancer can be really, really helpful for lip fold dermatitis. It's got thuya, which is really for fungus and yeast, really good for that, and silica, which is also really good for that disease.
Great, thanks. Katie is asking here, I am on day 7 of the Yeast Beast protocol, and I'm looking forward to seeing if the full protocol will work on my girl. My rescue conhound has had on and off yeast issues since we adopted her 2 years ago, but recently it has become worse than normal. We also live in Florida and it's getting hot. My questions are, does overreactive yeast cause more tartar on the teeth, split nails bad on the backside from paw pad to end on the nail? Weak is not exposed. Some dark discoloration on inner nail bed, excessive shedding and biting at the skin like a flea bite the dog. She's fully raw, has had food intolerance testing done, being on 2 of our probiotics to get her gut health better, coconut oil, bone broth, probiotic shampoo for bath time every 3 weeks or so. You name it, we have tried. I just need to kick this yeast.
Yeah. So I'm on day 7 of the Yeasty Beast protocol. Okay, so I'm trying to see how old this dog is. Um, all that stuff all those symptoms can be yeast.
She's 3, she said.
Only 3, eh? I don't know whether this dog is like, I mean, coonhounds are usually pretty energetic, but I don't know if she's super energetic. If she had a full blood work done, to me, it's yeast and leaky gut. They're both screaming. To me, that sounds like a really chronic inflammatory response, especially with the food allergies and stuff, along with along with yeast. So I would keep her on the Yeasty Beast protocol. And I would, do those 2 immediate relief things that we talked about for the bathtub. And I would seriously think with this dog, I would seriously think of doing intercurrent leaky gut protocol, like doing the relief protocol. I really would, because when you start seeing it affect almost the immune system to the point where it's affecting her nails, her tartar on her teeth, it's to me, it's just really screaming pro-inflammatory, right? Like really, really bad inflammation. That's usually coming from leaky gut, from an immune system that's about to go into like an autoimmune state. Like it's fringing on this immune mediated borderline autoimmune thing. So I would do the leaky gut protocol for 2 weeks, then I would do the Yeasty Beast protocol for 2 weeks, and in between them I would either do again Phytophthora or we have that protocol. If you want, someone will probably put it in the chat for you. If someone can just, Emily or Kaylin, if you could just put the relief protocol in the chat or where they can find it online. Katie, I would do that. Your dog's really young to be this intensely affected at 3 years of age, especially when it has short, like they aren't really long coated dogs, So and the raw, I would food intolerance. I don't know whether you're on a basic fairly novel protein. I really like doing I don't miss diversity and rotation. When an animal is in a situation where they're really, really heightened like this, I don't do rotation very often with food. So I will give them 1 protein and 1 food for 3 months, then I'll switch it. But I leave them on at least 3 months in order to allow the body to have some reprieve from that pro-inflammatory effect. So yeah, that's what I would do, Katie. I would put her on the relief protocol, make sure that she's on a protein that she's never been on before, that you for sure know that she's not sensitive to, and leave her on it for at least 3 months. Get as many, especially with her paws being so affected, get as many cotton sheets down as possible, and do those immediate those baths to try to get some reprieve on her skin topically.
Great, thanks, Julie. Susie's asking here, I'm curious, in your experience, if a severe yeast problem can present an obstacle to finding the correct constitutional remedy, or can muddy the picture, so to speak.
100%. 100%. That's why, I mean, I don't know if you're treating your dog, if you're treating your dog constitutionally. I'm a classical homeopath. I went to school for 4 years for human homeopathic medicine at UBC, and then I went to England with the British Homeopathic Veterinary Surgeons. So I am a classically trained homeopath, but with really chronic disease, whether it's cancer, severe allergies, severe skin disease. I rarely treated them constitutionally until I could get them to a place where I could really see them constitutionally. So I would give them things like nux vomica, like sulfur, like carcinosin, like pepper sulf if they were really bad, belladonna. I would treat them with what their skin was telling me. Because to me, skin disease, being really specific with skin disease, is a symptomatology. It's the body's expression. So you're not treating suppressively. You're treating on how the skin is actually expressing, how it is its language. So, like homeopathic berberis, like nux vomica, like depending, like we have echinacea, nux vomica, berberis, but aconite, arnica, pepper sulf, calcarb. When it comes to skin stuff, man, I will give animals sometimes 7, 8, 9 low potency homeopathic remedies in a cocktail that are indicated of what I'm seeing on the skin, because it's such a wheel, right? They're so affected by it. Their stress level goes up, their cortisol level goes up. That decreases their ability to heal. It also sends them into a state of fight or flight. It's not a very happy place to be healing. So homeopathy is like my savior at my clinic and here at my rescue farm. And I'm not afraid of giving 5, 6, 7 remedies all at one time if they're indicated in a combination, just to get some reprieve. And arnica and aconite are 2 really, really good ones to be giving them to try and take that cortisol edge off. and pain, right? Like the pain and inflammation. Histominum is amazing, right? It's for people out there who have animals with skin disease and skin issues and really crazy chronically itchy. You can buy a homeopathic remedy called histominum, and if you would get it in a fairly low potency, like 30C, and it helps to stabilize their histamine response. It's almost like giving them a homeopathic antihistamine. And I know homeopathy is not supposed to be given that way, but I make a big exception with chronic disease, and I have never had a problem at my farm. I have horses 10 years on combination homeopathic remedies, and they're doing amazing. So
Great.
okay.
Kathy, our lab Ruby is allergic to her own yeast.
Yeah.
What is best for this? We have tried lots, and she has been on a vet college recommended allergy needle once a week. Would just love your thoughts.
Well, I just finished talking about homeopathy. If you can, someone put Andrea Ring's name in the chat. Anytime a dog is allergic to something of its own, there is a homeopathic remedy called carcinosin that is, in my experience, a lifesaver, like a serious lifesaver. And you have to be careful when you're prescribing it. So I would definitely reach out to Andrea Ring, and yeah, and I would definitely get her to recommend some homeopathic remedies for this dog, along with everything else that I'm saying, right? The sheets, the making sure that there's no fragrances in the house, making sure that she's on a super clean diet, with making sure that her gut microbiome, because when the body starts to become allergic to its own self, more often than not, they have leaky gut. more and more and more often than not, they have leaky gut because they're licking their wound, they're licking their skin. The body absorbs their own yeast. Instead of the gut being able to filter it out and poop it out, it enters through the mucosal lining and into the bloodstream, and the body attacks it and saves it as an antibody, and then it's got its own yeast as an antibody, right? So it then it starts to attack itself. So reach out to Andrea. I would work specifically with this dog on leaky gut protocol first before I would do the Yeasty Beast protocol, to be honest.
Okay, Lily is asking here, I have a Cocker Spaniel, age 6.5, has crust stuff in both of his ears and scratching many times through the day. He loves to have his ears massaged. I'm giving her jump for joints, wolf and turkey tail, your go-to, and that seems to help. What else would help him, do you think?
So Cocker Spaniels get a lot. They get growths in their ears. So I don't know whether your dog has gone to a vet to be sure that he doesn't have any growths in his ears, but because he's a Cocker Spaniel and it's his ears, I would put him also on the rebalancer. You could, if you don't know that it's yeast in his ears, I still would potentially look at the Zymox again. I should get chairs and Zymox. The Zymox enzyme without the cortisone for sure. And again, I don't know what he's eating, but you know, real food, not processed food. You know, make sure that your water's clean, everybody. Make sure that your water's clean, that's not got a lot of fluoride and things like that. So, you know, spring water, or making sure that you're putting it through a filter. And, you know, just look like making sure that you're ticking off all the boxes, not just looking at yeast, but everything that causes the body's immune system either to be compromised, whether it goes autoimmune or whether it goes too low.
Okay, great. Sandra is asking here, my 7-year-old English lab has had yeast problems since she was 1. Her paws are red, scaly, bleeding, and bald. She has chronic yeast ears and black, thorned, bald, yeasty skin from chin to clavicle and on growing area. She's miserable 24/7. I have tried your protocol a couple years back, bought several kits since she's a large dog. It didn't help. Please advise.
Okay. Well, again, when they're really, really bad like this, I would bring out the big guns and I would treat her homeopathically. Anybody out there that's got an animal that you've done the protocols, you've tried the relief protocols, you've done the whole thing, they're on raw food diets, it's like you've exhausted all options. I would be definitely calling Andrea, because sometimes they need that extra homeopathic support at the same time as you're doing everything else, like the protocols and things like that. You need something to kickstart their immune system into balancing itself. And that's the other thing too, is, and then it's why I keep saying about the wolf, is because we want to make sure that you're using a probiotic. If you're gonna use the protocols, making sure that we're putting the probiotics that we've proven scientifically modulates the immune system. So we know that the wolf one modulates the immune system. We know that Phytospora does. So, you know, doing them intercurrently, that's what I would do. For her baldest chronic yeasty ears and black toughened bald yeasty skin from chin to clavicle. Oh my gosh, I wish I could. Next time we do something like this, I really should show some of the it sounds exactly like a black lab that I worked with that didn't have anything from here right down to here, and was like
Oh my
leather.
God.
Oh yeah, I've seen it all, like really, really bad ones. But it is doable. It definitely is doable. And I would probably call Andrea too, Sandra. Call Andrea and then start working with her homeopathically. And then once you do that, then I would put her back on a combination, a rotation of Yeasty Beast, the wolf or Phytophthora, and then leaky gut. So doing that relief thing, it sounds like you've done them, but possibly separate. I don't know. But I would reach out to Andrea.
Great. Let's gonna ask the last question for today.
Yeah.
So Lenovo is asking here, what can I give my dog for ear infection due to yeast allergy? Vet wants to give her steroids, but I want a more natural problem, he said, but a more natural path.
Yeah, solution. So again, for ears, I my go-to for yeasty ears is Zymox without steroids. And definitely if it's a chronic ear infection, I would be doing the Yeasty Beast protocol and then the leaky gut protocol after that.
Perfect. So I guess that's it for today, or are you reading any other questions that maybe wanna?
Oh, there's just so much.
Yes. Yeah, we still have like some lots of questions, but we also answered a lot of them too. So, but so it's getting late, and I know that sometimes we all get frustrated because we can't answer all their
Well,
questions.
today we're gonna try. Remember today we were gonna try and collect these and maybe see if we
Yes,
can
we're gonna see what we can do with the remaining ones.
because we knew that we were gonna have you guys. We thought we were probably gonna have a lot of questions left over here because yeast is such a pain in the butt. But I think that what we're gonna try and do today and just see. I mean, we can't promise, but maybe what we might try and do is take a look at some of these and maybe put some broad questions. So maybe not specific for everybody's question, but if I'm reading them and I see that there's maybe some similarities, then maybe we can put something out on our Facebook page. For those of you that aren't following our Facebook page, if you guys can reach out and find out how to do that. I don't even know how to do that. And then we're going to try to go through some of these questions that haven't been answered. So stay tuned. And maybe Michelle can put on the collective or on our Facebook page that we are going to try and address some of these on a broader, like on a higher level, right? Not every single question, but maybe put something out that's a little bit more that everyone can look at.
I just want to read one comment here from Diesel Mini, because she's saying like, thank you for this video. I was so frustrated about dealing with yeast because it's my first time knowing and learning about yeast, and she doesn't feel alone anymore. So I'm very happy of reading this because that's the main purpose of the AJAs, right? It's not only having you talk, but having you show everyone that they're not alone, and then we can help. And if maybe your question is not answered today, maybe from learning from the other questions, you can also do something about the problem, that the issue that you're having with your dog. So that's the main purpose of it, for you all like to feel comfortable around us, and don't feel alone, definitely.
Yeah, no, and I think I am gonna try this. Like I said, we were going to try and see if we could look at these and maybe answer some of them in a broader range that would affect the majority of them.
Amazing.
So we'll try to do that because I know, guys, like yeast it is like blah. It's an ugly monster.
And I would also want to tell you guys that if you have any answer, like any questions, I mean, I know you guys have, you can also join our community on Facebook. We can help you there. It's the Outdoor Beast Collective. So if you're not there, join us and ask your question there, and we'll do our best to help you guys there. I would like to thank everyone who joined us today. We had people from all over the world, so this is amazing. And of course, you, Julie, thank you so much for this discussion, for your time, and for your knowledge. Don't know if you have any final words.
I guess to not give up hope. And I feel like, you know, there is yeast is a really tough one. It really is a tough one. And but there's not a lot. I've seen thousands of them, and there hasn't been a lot that we haven't been able to get a hold on. But for ones that are really bad for you guys, I would really I would recommend reaching out to Andrea, because homeopathy can give them so much reprieve, right? And when they get this reprieve, their body can start to heal. So the ones that have already tried protocols or already tried different, like everything on the planet, I definitely would think about maybe starting to do some, you know, intense homeopathy, and with a homeopath that really knows what they're doing, right? There's lots of homeopaths that are great, and they mean well, and they are really good homeopaths, but animal homeopathy is very different than human homeopathy. It's like night and day. So it's really, really different. So I would be specifically going to a homeopath that has tons of experience with animals and understands the physiology part of it too, right?
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you, Julie. And I wish you all a great night, and don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. You can sign up on our website to get all the info about Outdoor Bees, our promos, new blog postings, and future Ask Julie Anything sessions. Thank you so much. Enjoy the sunny days that are coming to us finally. So have a good night,
Thanks so much
everyone.
for being here, everybody. Hang in there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Julie. Bye.
Bye.